therapy has this idea of I'm an authority over you, right? I think therapy, the shadow side, is that it can be prone to undoing that sense of you know what's best for you. Like you are the authority on you.
Welcome to Healing After Harm, a place for nuanced conversations about pathways forward for individuals and communities after experiencing harm in a learning or healing environment. We'll be covering topics like accountability, repair, how to rebuild your life, responding to allegations, finding your voice, and more. Now, these conversations go to real places, covering topics like sexual abuse, psychological abuse, emotional abuse, financial abuse, amongst others. Please take care of yourself, taking pauses or stopping as needed. I'm your host, Hina Patel. Let's dive in. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Healing After Harm. Welcome, Lisa Case, to the podcast. Hello.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So, Lisa and I connected in a really interesting way, like around a really interesting topic. So, I've been sharing with folks about this podcast and talking about abuse and learning and healing environments. And Lisa heard about this and reached out and said, "Do you want to know about how these behaviors are perpetuated by mental health practitioners?" And I'm like, "Tell me more." So here we have Lisa to spill the tea on how these behaviors that support or allow harm to happen are actually being enabled or continued by folks that we often go to when we're in our healing journey from healing from harm that might have happened in a learning environment or a healing environment, maybe in like the more spiritual community, but coming to like a licensed practitioner. And it's like, oh, it is rampant there. So it is an example of a healing environment, but it's an interesting one because we come to a therapist often to be on our team on our journey to reclaim our sovereignty and sense of self. Or at least I did. I will say that. Let's make this about me for a second, that my therapists, my licensed mental health practitioners were really important supports
Yeah.
on my journey. But what I'm hearing in conversation with Lisa is that that might not always be the case.
Right. And my message, I want to be very clear, right? Not all therapists. My message is not you should never go to therapy. You should never trust a therapist. I am a therapist. I still see people and I wouldn't if I thought it was like, horrible all around. But I think much like you probably had to come to through what you went through, my message is like you still need to be discerning and you shouldn't assume that this person is safe or that this person doesn't have like some harmful behaviors and to allow yourself to kind of check in and be like, how am I feeling? Is this feeling like it's actually healing? Am I feeling confused? It's not everybody, but I think people often think, as I thought, therapists are probably the healthiest people out there, like percentage wise it's probably a safer population, and that's not actually true. And so I just think it's important to recognize that part.
Thank you for naming that, because as someone who is more in the alternative healing space, right? I'm a somatic practitioner. I do energy work, ancestral work, stuff that isn't licensed. You can get a lot of flack, a little bit of like, that's not licensed, so it's not going to be as safe. You need to be more concerned. And what you're bringing to the table is that just because there's a licensing board and some sort of oversight, that doesn't automatically mean that harmful behavior isn't going to be present.
No, this idea that licensure guarantees safety is nonsense. It's nonsense. Like I know examples where licensure boards didn't protect people, don't take action. Like there, many, many, many practitioners, there's a culture of not reporting one another and of like letting things slide. I have been encouraged by people to not report other clinicians who are engaging in very significant boundary harm in very vulnerable spaces. Like, so a licensure board, it does give some accountability. There's someone to go to, but does it guarantee safety? Can I pass a licensure exam and still know I'm not going to follow any of these rules? Of course I can. Of course I can. Anybody can. So, yeah, that whole it's a wish, it's a fantasy that people have that, oh, this license keeps everyone safe.
That makes me sad, and then I also feel a level of encouragement or empowerment within it in the sense that, yes, we wanna trust structures to protect us, right? And we would hope, like, that's our wish that that would happen, but at the same time, there shouldn't be an abdication of our own sovereignty, of our own agency, and that discernment and continual honing of our own internal compass is always important, is what I'm hearing in what you're sharing so far.
Yes. I love what yes, I love that. And I will say I mean, I spent years, 15 years in therapy. I went through therapy school. I did the supervision, decades, and it wasn't until I went and got trained as a psychic in a psychic school because I wanted to learn, the psychic meditation. A friend was like, it's really cool. It gives you, and I'm like, why am I in the psychic school learning more about sovereignty, agency, boundaries, and consent than I learned in there? Because therapy has this idea of I'm an authority over you, right? And what you're talking about is this like, and so, and can a psychic be abusive and bad? Yes, of course, anyone can. But
Absolutely.
it was very interesting going into psychic world, and the whole premise of the school that I went to is this like, we don't tell people what to do. We don't ever usurp someone's agency. We don't even give like blessings and healings until you have consent, right? And it's like you never know what someone should do. And so it was very equalizing in a way that I think therapy, the shadow side, is that it can be prone to undoing that sense of you know what's best for you. Like you are the authority on you. That's not the orientation of it or of a lot of therapists. And I think that can be dangerous.
Yeah, even just you saying that the premise of therapy is reinforcing a hierarchy,
Yeah.
that the therapist has the authority and the client doesn't, right? That they're in this hierarchical relationship automatically goes like, "Ooh, that doesn't feel good,"
Yeah. No. And it's
right?
baked in.
Because we're not when there's hierarchy, unfortunately, in the world that we live in, there isn't training or conversation. And how do you hold power over with generosity and a big heart and benevolence, right?
Right.
Power over is generally the examples we hear and what we largely experience in the world is that it's a taking, it's an exploitative place. It's a place, yeah, it's a place for exploitation versus a responsibility that needs to be handled not just with care, but really seen as a big responsibility.
Right. Yeah, and if I'm diagnosing you, if I have the ability to diagnose you, I have power over you. I have a lot of power over you. Now, can a diagnosis be super helpful? Sure. But like inherently, what I'm saying is there is pathology in you. There is something that you're doing, that does not fit into society, that is not norm, that is not desirable. Like the minute and because I mean, in my role, I can diagnose, I have the ability to give you a diagnosis that is stigmatized, that is harmful. I can diagnose you without asking, does this symptom help you or does it hurt you? I mean, I can just make all kinds of judgments that are that power over. And it can be very, it can give you access to things. It can give you access to medication and supports, and that's wonderful. And it can also be very harmful and controlling.
So there's an interesting place when you've been sharing more about your journey with me, you've spoken a lot about how your awareness of these power dynamics and the way that the mental health world and psychotherapy world can be enabling, you really saw it within group settings, right? As a practitioner and as a participant in group settings, right? And a lot of times when harm is happening within a learning environment, such as music or dance or spirituality, for example, or when it's happening in a healing environment, so plant medicine or going to group therapy, um, there are these characteristics or behaviors that you've been able to track and really name that can help someone in terms of identifying health or lack of health. I'd love for you to share more about your experience in group spaces and what you've observed.
Sure. So I was in group therapists we're trained in groups. So we sit in groups, kind of, there's a leader and we're sort of observing their style and we're watching their intervention. So I have probably sat in, I don't know how many groups over how many hundreds of hours, either as a leader, as a participant, right? And you're kind of in this weird role because you're a therapist, but you're also like a patient and you're with your colleagues, and some of your colleagues have power over you and some of them don't. And it's very strange. And sometimes your therapist is there or your supervisor is there at this conference. It's very odd, a lot of it in many, many ways. And then I was also in a personal psychotherapy group. That's actually why I became a therapist. I was in this psychotherapy group for over a decade, and when I left that therapy group, it was one of the most harmful, traumatizing, difficult things that I've ever been through getting out of that group. And
So this was a group that you found supportive for you in your personal journey, and you were seen as someone who has promise, and also something as you were trying to leave made the experience not feel so supportive or helpful anymore.
well, and it was basically what I noticed when I look back on it. There were many, many things about it that were very supportive. There was a lot that I learned that was really, really good and really, really helpful. What I noticed was, and this is kind of one of the first things that I want people to be aware of, is that anytime that I would talk about leaving, or anytime I would question the leader, or anytime I would point out like something in the group that maybe didn't feel great or kind of a more systemic issue, I would be demeaned. I would be pathologized. I would have my trauma weaponized against me. And it wasn't just me. Anytime anyone else tried to leave, I started to notice this is like a script. It's like anytime anyone tries to leave, right? There's this like, oh, or if they left the wrong way, there's a right way to leave, but nobody can ever quite do it. And you never quite graduate. And how do you get out of here? And I started, and everybody's saying, oh, this isn't like therapy jail. You can leave whenever you want. But it was like, but when people try, no one ever, very few people could do it right, so to speak. And when people did it wrong, they would always come back with like, well, that was diagnostic. That, indicating like this person is severely like messed up or problematic. And so, and
I
then,
just have this image
oh,
of like a maze, and you're like, you keep hitting walls and you're like, how do I get out of this thing?
yes. And at that time, I'm leading groups also. I have my own practice and I have my own groups that I'm leading. And I'm noticing because I'm not own, like I'm doing some of what I was taught, right? Because you're taught like, well, people have resistance. And when the resistance comes up, you got to try to keep them in the group. So I'm thinking, well, that's healing, right? That's helpful. That's how, because somebody's anxiety can, and then so I'm thinking this is the right thing to do, but I'm noticing like, it is really hard to get out of here. Like
Mm.
how when is someone done? Why am I the one deciding when someone is done? Why is it that whenever someone leaves, like they're always the bad guy? And like there's never any reflection going on in the group of like, oh, well, maybe there's something going on in here. Or just maybe it was just time for them. There was never a normal leaving that was like, oh, that person grew or they changed and we could celebrate that. And my patients would bring it up and they'd be like, this feels, and I couldn't reconcile it, right? Because I'm trying
Your
to like
patients were
deal.
trying to leave your group. When you say
Well,
your
some,
patients
yeah,
were,
or kind of
yeah.
being like, I feel like we're not supposed, and they're bringing up, and so I'm having all this cognitive dissonance because I'm going, well, I have to help you by keeping you here. But
Because
also,
that's what you're being trained to
yes,
do.
because that's what I'm being trained to do. Like that's what a good group leader does, right? That's how you hold people and you get them to be so attached, because that's like an idea is that long-term forever attachment is the outcome that everyone wants for everything. Like that is being healed.
Sorry, I'm just having like a
Well,
very big
yeah.
ick factor happening right
Mhm.
now because I think for me, I'm just feeling the clash. And like I think it's resonant with you too and who you
Yeah.
are right now. You're speaking about a past you, right? Of like one of the first things I tell my clients is I do not want you to become
No.
like addicted to me or attached to me. Like I want you to leave. I want you to outgrow me and for us to be done. And you're like, I need to go work with someone else, or I just need to be on my own right now. And like that, like it's from the very beginning of our conversation is that I do not want this to be a long term relationship in the therapeutic setting.
Yeah. And there are many, many therapists that operate that like that. I want to be clear again.
Yes. Yep.
Um, because I think what you and I want people to be aware of is if you're in this situation where that may not be the case, we want you to be keyed into it, because a lot of the what I call the shadow or kind of the darker side of therapy is that's a therapist's failure. If you
Yes.
leave me, that's my failure. That is I'm supposed to have a good enough relationship with you that you want to be here like, forever and ever potentially. And so if the therapists are getting trained, and I never quite bought this part, but I mean, I know people who do, and it's like if you're getting trained into believing that if someone leaves you, you have failed, that is
That sounds
going
like
to
an
create.
attachment wound there. Sorry.
Yes, exactly. And so then you take someone who has an attachment wound of their own, right? Like I came into therapy and I was told, because I had kind of these dynamics in my family where everybody would have a fight and the relationship would be over, right? So I
Mm.
was told, you don't know how to attach. You don't, even though that wasn't really true. I had long-term friendships. I had long-term, like it didn't really match. But I was thinking, oh yeah, you're right. I have to not be like XYZ in my family and have a fight. I have to learn how to stay, and I have to learn how to work through things because I had no skills for working through conflict. And that was true. But the flip side of that is you need to stay through anything. You need to stay no matter how somebody's treating you. Loyalty is what matters the most. Like like if you've chosen to go somewhere, you stay there forever. Otherwise, you have like a characterological problem or you are like, right, there are these ways that it's like to a degree that might be a true helpful healing thing, but not for everyone. And for me, actually, honestly, my healing came, what I actually needed to learn was to leave and to know when to leave, right? Like that. So there are ways that all of these things can get very twisted for people. And if you're coming in with an idea of yourself, all I have to do is kind of like what I would be told in mine was, well, now you're acting a bit like, like X person in your life
Uh,
who was this, now, oh, look who you're acting. And then you're like, well, God, I'm here to try to not do that. And
totally. Well, like
and then we're back. And then we're back. So,
100%. 100%. What I'm hearing in terms of something to look at when deciding to be in a space or not, right? Is what is the mechanism for departure or what are the stories of departure? How many people have left, right? So I think about my own experience of how would my former teacher talk about the people who left, right? Would he speak highly of them? Or would he speak like, oh, this was like, look at them, they did this, or look at them, they left me and now they're nothing, right? And so, what are the stories that you're hearing of people who have left? And while you're there, what are you witnessing of the process for people who are leaving?
right,
That
right.
is there a mechanism, a healthy mechanism for departure in a way that, when someone leaves, it's celebrated of like, look how much they've grown, or they're spreading their wings and they're going off to other things. How do we celebrate that? How do we welcome that and continue even potentially to be maybe not necessarily in a like in licensed psychotherapist relationship, you might not stay in touch with your therapist. But if you're in like a learning environment, right, where like you've studied an art form for 10, 15 years, and then you're starting to go off on your own, is there a way that at events and stuff like that, are former students coming back, right? Are they still are they considered part of the extended community and held with a lot of respect and care versus being belittled and demeaned privately? Because they might be, when they might come back around for an event and be like, oh, look, I'm so happy you're here. But then in the conversations when they're not around,
Right.
are they spoken about well, or are they spoken about in a way of like, look at him?
Right. Well, and there's ways like in a professional community, like I don't know, in your community, but like, are they getting published? Are they getting chosen to like, because you can harm someone's, are they getting referrals from people? Because there are ways to like be really friendly to somebody, but still be undermining their work and their career. And it's like, or are we only giving those opportunities to people who like follow these very specific rules, stay forever, right? Like, how is that? And another thing that I would add, because that's what I have is like the biggest thing to pay attention to is how
Hmm.
people are treated when they leave.
Hmm.
And the other thing, and I don't know if you experience this, but if you leave wrong, and it's interesting because I have left now a number of community of anytime I have left either a community or a group
Mhm.
wrong, it was literally because I either witnessed abuse or I was being like actively bullied. And I was like, I'm not coming back for this. Like, no one else in the group will speak to me after.
Yes.
So that
You
is,
become
and
a
in a
pariah.
therapy, yeah,
You
and in
become a
a
pariah.
therapy group, that's, kind of normal because like, you're not supposed to like maintain contact outside. So, but like in a professional space or it's like that to me, and you carry that initially as like shame and like I did something wrong. I mean, it took me years to not blame, well, if everybody's like not talking to me, I guess I did something. But it's like, I wasn't holding there's no empathy for the fact that, like, I was being bullied or that there was abuse happening that I didn't wanna be part of tolerating. It's just, "Oh, she's bad, and we don't speak to her." Like, people that I'd known for years and years, and you're, like, dead. So that's another thing is, like, are you dead to people? Are people just, like, do they not exist anymore? Like, is there punishment on the way out? I've experienced and seen a lot of, like, really questionable kinds of punishing someone for leaving. My therapist, when I was leaving, refused to speak to me. So I was, it's like she just wouldn't talk. It was like a, decades long relationship, and you're just going to pretend I'm not in this group while I'm
Wow.
following the rules to leave appropriately. And like, you're
So in the
treating me.
process of leaving, they started like
Mhm.
icing you out.
Yeah.
Wow.
And
So while you
yeah,
were still in
like,
it,
yeah,
wow.
angry, like wouldn't even talk to me or look at me or it was and meanwhile, I'm going through this appropriate exit process because I'm like, I can't break the rules. But it's like, that's a seriously punitive for something that has been a significant attachment relationship for me, right?
Mhm.
And so it's like all of that. Like if someone because I think what we don't realize is if someone can't leave well to something that they are attached to, whether it's for a year, 2 years, they like people, if they feel like they're going to be excoriated on the way out or, had bad things said about them or burn the whole thing up, that's a form of like coercion that will make people stay when they don't really want to. And that's what I think I always knew that, and it became just louder and louder where I was like, "This is actually a coercive setup." And you never have to tell someone you can't stay, but you're coercing people into it.
Yeah. Yeah. So there's the place of, I'm hearing the example in your story of being iced out, the therapist being like vindictive and angry and stuff, right? And there's another place, and but you still felt committed to your path of leaving in the right way, the healthy way.
Yeah.
And there can also be a place of someone expressing a desire to leave, and then what we would say in Gujarati is "Koni gor lagayo." So you put jaggery on the elbow. So you entice them with ways of like, well, if you stay, we have this opportunity coming up and that opportunity coming up, but you won't have it if you don't stay.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think in therapy there is the like, oh, there's work you could do. You could like, evolve into whatever this thing. In therapy it tends to sound, if you're with somebody who's like, in the not great space, it's going to sound more pathologizing. I'm very worried about you. I'm worried that you're going to go back and relapse. I'm worried that you're not. There will be this really like, and what's interesting is this may have been a situation where you were doing really great, because often the reason you want to leave is you're like, I got what I came for. I'm doing great. I'm sober. I've moved on. I'm dating someone. I'm whatever. My life is better. I've got that job that I wanted. I feel I'm not depressed anymore, whatever. You probably are going to be. So it's like, and the therapist will be like, oh, this is great. You're like my model, golden child, whatever. You're all healed. And then you're like, yeah, I think I'm done here. I'm ready to go. And suddenly it's like, well, I'm very worried about you. I'm not sure you're ready to just be out there. Like, and so there will be this pathologizing, or like, what makes you think that when that time that you relapsed 5 years ago, what makes you think that's not going to happen again without us? So there's this doubt that gets created. That's like, because the group did help you at one point, and you're kind of like, well, that's true. I mean, yeah, okay, that did. And so there's all this doubt, and some people are very susceptible. And if you have the therapist in a position of power, and I have seen group rules written out that are, you don't make any big decisions without consulting with the group. That's in like some
Well, and that's like
agreement.
group think, and it's like,
Yeah.
what? Well,
Yeah.
and
And
I'm
so
just
you're thinking, well, this makes me this is like not healthy, right? Because therapists tell us, so you're like, oh, this is some pathological part of me that doesn't want to really consult, or you're just like, I've just kind of decided, right? And so it will sound like, but like kind of like, oh, I don't care if you leave or not. But of course, I don't know. I don't think you're going to be okay out there.
that so hits at the identity center, right?
Yeah.
In like, if we're talking about the chakra system, it's that solar plex, that sense of self and identity. And it's this perpetuation of like, something's wrong with you and you need
Yeah.
me. And like, I'm hearing this codependency in it.
Right.
And what's heartbreaking, right? And you and I have both experienced this in our stories, is that it's these people know our wounds, right? So for me in my story, um, I wanted a partner, right? And I still do. I would love to have a long-term romantic partner. Yeah. And my former teacher would tell me that I am so difficult,
Yeah.
right? And that it's in my astrology that I have a challenging marriage house and I'm so difficult that I'm lucky to be with someone like him who knows how to handle me. Do I
Yeah.
really think that I'm going to find better?
Wow.
Right. So, this story that I had been told since I was a little girl, because I was bossy, and like, so it was like that I'm too much, right? Just got like amplified
Yeah.
in this place of like amplified and coupled with this desire that I have for partnership
Mhm.
and being in a very fucked up partnership with him, but I was in
Yeah.
a romantic relation, wasn't like a romantic relationship, an intimate relationship with him of, I know how to handle you. How do you believe that someone else will? And it's because I am so special that I know how to handle you. So
Right.
yeah.
And there's the undercutting. And I'm so sorry, first of all, that you experienced that. But because there's the undercutting, you're too difficult, you're too much, what you want. And what happened with me, because I'm a similar kind of personality, like, and I also was in therapy dating. I mean, I think that's often like the hook is either I'm trying to save my marriage or figure that out, or single and dating, and being told like, well, obviously you have this issue where you don't know how to work through conflict. So you're never going to have a satisfying relationship until you can figure out how to stay and essentially put up with abuse. I mean, and so then that translates into, then you're out there dating and it's like, well, I have to fight through this with this guy and I have to like, and so then I'm tolerating like dating people that are not treating me well because it's like, well, this is the work, right? And that's the whole thing women get fed. I mean,
Yeah.
women get fed this of relationships are work and you have to work through it. But it's like, that's really not true, honestly. Like, good relationships are actually not that much work. They shouldn't be that much work. But like, if you're trying to keep someone in a therapy group, you need them to believe that relating is really, really hard. And so you get those messages about like you're so those weirdly idealizing but also like demeaning messages at the same time,
Yeah.
and it's super
Yeah.
confusing.
It's so confusing, and it's this place of whatever environment you're in, right? Whether in your group therapy, the circumstances I was in, like when you're in these learning and healing environments, right? There's this relationship between the practitioner and the client, the student and the teacher, right? It's a deep relational connection, right? And my sense is that those of us who do get manipulated and coerced in these circumstances, it is because we have these relational wounds that come from much earlier
Mhm.
in life. And we come into these places to address them, right? Like you're
Yeah.
saying, someone will come to even will come to a therapist if they're healing from harm in a learning environment, right?
Mhm.
Um, whether it be music or dance or martial arts, like they'll come to a therapist to go like, I want to heal from this, right? And for
Yeah.
that to be exploited further versus being addressed and rewired for greater health and being like, wow, like look how far you've come
Yeah.
in your relational dynamic that you feel ready to leave.
Yeah. Isn't that exciting that you and that's never how for me it was ever treated. And I have I can kind of make this story short, but when I left that therapy, I mean, I was like destroyed, traumatized. I was very, and what was weird is I had gotten married, I had kids, I'd done what I set out to do, which is why I thought, I was done. But I then, because I was like, is this me? Because I mean, you really do, you get indoctrinated into this. And it was just like, I must have done something wrong for her to have treated me that way on the way out. And like, obviously, and so I went then to another to another group. I went and I consulted with somebody that I really trust, and she was, and I was like, I need to like work through this and figure this out with somebody who's not. And I got placed. I did a therapist, like a group for therapists with somebody who's very well respected. And I said, and he knew specifically what I was like, I have been deeply traumatized. I need to figure out what of this is mine, what of this, was like not good in the therapy. Like I was so disoriented and confused. And many things about that group were actually really good. I learned a lot about like much more consent-based therapy. I learned a lot. But what was interesting was someone came into that group one day randomly and started screaming at me out of nowhere. I mean, I didn't ever see this person in between the groups. There's like, I mean, it was unprovoked, literally screaming at me, accusing me of things that I had not done. She was revealing confidential information. And so and everyone in this group of therapists, senior therapist, no one is stopping her. Not one person is stopping her except me. And I'm the one being screamed at. And I finally scream back, stop talking. Like you are violating confidentiality. Stop talking. I'm not even at this point worried about your being abusive and yelling at me. It was like, this is a HIPAA violate. Like you need to stop talking.
Yeah.
No one in that group of therapist, national level senior therapist, no one says anything.
Wow.
No one says anything. I get off that call. It's a Zoom. I get off. I'm like, I have a couple friends in there, people that had my phone number. I'm like, but you're not supposed to talk in between, which is interesting. I'm thinking everyone was in shock. They'll think about it for a week. We'll go back. Still, whole session, nobody says a word. Once I brought it up, then people would talk about it. But nope, it was kind of this like, well, I feel like maybe something bad happened, but I don't really know I was like, what is going on? You have a clear HIPAA, like this isn't confusing. So once it became clear, the thing that I find troubling is to me, that is a case where you say to somebody, this is not okay. You have a bully and you have a victim. And I don't need to be the victim, but like that's not confusing. And it doesn't need to be a process. Like you
Hmm.
don't really, but therapy has this very neutral, everything is neutral, and I'm supposed to work it out with her.
It happened in a group space and nothing was done.
No,
So is there an acknowledgement, hey, this thing happened.
no.
Here's where we went wrong, or here's where I should have stepped in. That's what I mean, right? That
Yeah.
there's
No.
an acknowledgement, there's a repair, because there was a rupture, a
But it
very
was like a
public
dysfunctional
rupture.
family that just goes back into like, well, there's an elephant in the room, but nobody's talking about it. And it repeats. And I'm like, to me, and I've seen this with racialized things, I've seen this with sexual harassment, I've seen it with, it's like, I'm like, to me, that is a time when the leader has to step in and be like, guys, if nobody's bringing this up, we have to deal with it. Like, to me, that is leadership. But that is not how therapists are trained by and large in group. We are neutral. We don't take stances. But to me, it is very harmful in a case of like harm, bullying, where you have, ethical violations. Like that is when we need to have some leadership and not be neutral. And what you see is this collapse. And it's like, so now I'm supposed to believe that you guys are the ones like teaching people how to navigate abuse dynamics in their life? Like confront people in couples therapy when somebody is abusive? Like, why am I supposed to believe? And when they did, finally, someone did ask the leader, well, don't you think, that this was like, you should probably do so. And totally neutral response. I don't think she meant to be yelling at Lisa. I don't think, and that's when I was like, I was going to do the 4 weeks. I was like, that was the first time I said, you know what? I don't need to pay you for me to teach you how to do your job. And why am I paying for expertise of peers who no one can like sort out? Like no one could even see through the ethical issue, which was so black and white. And I think that's what I want people to understand is that most therapists have no praxis around like power or abuse it's like that's not a 50-50 we're going to talk it out. That's like you need to say like we can't do this. This is not okay. You need to like repair this and fix it. And like that I've never seen that happen ever. Unless I'm doing it. I do it. I'm sure other people do it, but in group training therapy spaces, it is not the norm. It's
I
not
mean,
the norm. And that plays into individual therapy, that sounds like, oh, well, maybe he's, being really mean to you because of his past trauma. That's not, we don't need to do that. But that's, if you're never viewing a victim or a perpetrator ever, and I don't need to label people as those things, but we do need to label behavior. We need to have clarity about behavior that is harmful. And many, 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 many therapists do not. They just watch these situations like, what can we do?
and if I extrapolate that, you're talking about within a therapy setting, which is a healing setting
Mm-hmm.
or supposed to be a healing setting. And if I extrapolate that even to remove the word therapist for a second, to look at just larger dynamics that we're speaking to in
Yeah.
general, it is this place of what are you noticing about repair skills, right?
And right. Yeah. Go ahead.
And and I've seen this. I think you've seen this. You've done trainings beyond like psychotherapy, like you've did the psychic training. I've been in somatic therapy trainings, energy work, ancestral work trainings and stuff like that. And one of the things that I find challenging, and I'm like, is every one of these trainings needs to have a module that's on repair, and not repair of how do I help you repair something in your history, but needs to have a, a module, a training, a focused place for conversation on repair as the practitioner, right? Learning
Right.
repair skills elsewhere, like you got to go do I mean, people should go do their own conflict resolution training, like do stuff around like mindful communication, all of that stuff. Absolutely agree that those trainings on their own are very, very valuable. But the fact that they are kept separate and don't show up in these trainings that are working with people's psyches, to me it feels like a big misstep,
It's a
because
huge, yeah.
because it's not, as practitioners, it's not like we're not ever going to cause harm. We are going to hurt people. It is inevitable. We're human. And what are your repair skills?
And I was taught never to repair. I was overtly told, do not ever apologize to a client. You are never wrong. You are never, ever wrong. And I was like, and I mean, that's certainly how I was treated. And I had many times that I went to my therapist and was like, this was very harmful. I would like, and I never got an apology. They were never wrong. And it was deeply wounding and difficult and confusing because, you're trying to like navigate, well, is it, because it always, in many, many, if you have a practitioner who is not in what I would call a genuinely healing framework, if I can convince you that everything is your fault and that something is wrong with you and nothing is me, I can like twist that a million ways. Oh, maybe you're reacting to this thing that I did because of your mother. Oh, maybe you're reacting to this thing of, you're overreact. I can twist that all kinds of ways. And it's now all I do is apologize to people constantly because I want to model that. I will apologize for things nobody's even brought up to me. If I'm after a group or after a session, if I'm like, I don't love that I did that. That was like I'll just come in and be like, I just want a name. I don't know if anybody noticed it. I said something. I now think it was kind of silly. So I want people to see that. And I've noticed that the more I do that, the more accountability and repair, that's what's actually healing to my clients, because then it's modeled and there's no shame. And they're like, oh, well, if she can screw up and admit it, maybe I can too. Whereas what you have going on in these groups is either everything just kind of goes under, right? And nobody ever talks about anything and we all feel icky about it and it's gross, which is terrible modeling. That's what everybody's trying to heal from. That's what we all grew up in, that we're trying to heal from. Or we put all the labor on the harmed party, which we know from all the work on like racial equity and like that's not what we're supposed to do. But it's like I'm supposed to show up and like do work with her. Like someone needs to have her. Like we need to understand. And there's very little like understanding of that. That like there's no labor for the healing would be to say to the victim, you just sit back and we're gonna hold her accountable. Right. And maybe next time you'll be the jerk and we'll hold you accountable. Fine. But that doesn't, people don't want to confront, therapists don't want to confront the abuser because that person will often blast out of the therapy. And then you're going to make less money. That's what I believe. This is my really cynical idea. If that person blasts out, right? Whereas the abused person is more likely to just spend 3 years ruminating and figuring out like, well, I got to figure out how to not be abused. I got to keep talking about this. So now everybody's there and they're still paying. Whereas
Uh,
if you keep confronting abusers, they're going to blast out of there
Yeah.
most of the
Which
time.
connects back to what you were saying earlier about what is the process for leaving, that there's really orienting to, is this a place where I can enter? Or there's examples of you enter and then you can depart because the investment is in your empowerment and in your liberation, or becoming a more full expression of yourself.
And my new group agreements, now I've rewritten them and it felt really brave because I've never, but my group agreement says I agree to leave whenever I want, however I want, in any means that I want. Because sure, it's nice if we can have a 4-week closeout and everybody kumbayas. That's great. But like, it wasn't right for me. I don't want you to stay if you're being abused and harmed, A. And B, that's not how life works. People ghost. People don't, and we all need to learn how to cope with that. So it's like if you give people the freedom to do whatever they want to do, we all get to learn to like react to that. And that, because a lot of also, I stayed in a bunch of relationships because had this idea from this therapy that like any rupture is bad. That's not true. Sometimes we should break up. Sometimes we should. And so it instills not good things on all sides.
I love the permission field that you're
Yeah.
creating. by saying you can leave whenever you want,
Yeah.
however you want. That's so beautiful. Lisa, it's been such a joy to speak to you. And,
About these
you know,
depressing things.
this is, I don't, here's the thing. When we can name it, when we can put it in the center and name it, we can actually do something about it.
That's my interest, right? It's like, I don't want everybody to be terrified of therapy. It's not all, who knows? Maybe I got into some weird niche world. I have no idea. It's very strange. Um, but it's like, I do want people to know that they're an equal player and can be like, this is not right for me. This doesn't feel good, which is what I want you to do in all your relationships with everybody you meet. I want you to listen to your nervous system and be like, something does not, I don't like this.
What if nothing's wrong with you? Lisa, is there anything else that you want to share with our listeners before we close out today?
I think I do want to echo that idea that healing looks different for everybody. There is no one right way to heal. And that, if you have a practitioner who believes that, I think you are probably in good hands.
I love that so much. So, if you want to connect with Lisa, I'm going to put information in the show notes, including her podcast. What if nothing's wrong with you? And so, feel free to reach out to her and connect with her. If there's something that you loved about this podcast, me and Lisa would love to hear from you to know what resonated. Please let us know. Also, like, comment, subscribe, share this podcast with someone that you think it might help, because that is the intention. Is how do we find places where there's greater health, greater safety available for us to find our own way to heal, to find our own way to liberate ourselves, because ultimately our practitioners are the supports. Our practitioners, our teachers are meant to be supports. We are the ones doing our own journey in our own bodies, in our own lives, and do not ever give that agency away.
I love that. Amen. Yes.
Thank you, Lisa. Thank you for tuning in. And until next time, I'll talk to you soon.